Hey everybody, it's Sherri. Welcome back to my channel. Today is another episode of 3D Interference based off of my newest book called Starseeds and the Great Awakening, which is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I'll put the links below for you to check it out. I'm really excited because I started to get some reviews come in, and they're super fun to read. And so thank you for those of you that have purchased the book. Thank you for those that have reached out to me and those of you that have left reviews. I really appreciate everyone's feedback. I really put a lot of my heart and soul into this book, and it's such a pleasure to start receiving people and their comments and how they feel about the book. And oh, it warms my heart. So thank you so much. So today on this episode of 3D Interference, I want to talk about walk-ins because I think that there are a lot more walk-ins now more than ever before. And I also want to talk about reverse walk-ins. I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with reverse walk-ins, but they are another type of walk-in. So let's talk about walk-ins first. So walk-ins are souls that come in and take over somebody's life, but it's the choice of the person themselves. So let's say somebody has a really important life, and they, for many variations of reasons, they are unable to follow through with it, whether they have suffered from addiction or they have had severe trauma and abuse, and they neglect. For whatever reason, they are disconnected or dissociated from their physical body, and the soul of the person is kind of putting out an SOS, telling the universe, listen, if you don't send somebody else, I might, take my own life, or I fear that I will not be able to follow through with this soul contract that I have. And the soul contract in these situations is genuinely like a big contract. They're going to do something big, or they are contracted to bring in, let's say it's a woman that needs to bring in children, and these children have a big life and they need to come through her. There's lots of reasons for it. So what happens is the soul kind of petitions on a higher consciousness, like their higher self will petition and ask their soul family or their guides to send another soul in place of them, because they just can't handle it. They can't handle being here. And if they don't exit the body and another soul come through, something tragic's going to happen, or they fear that they might take their own life, or it would severely compromise their purpose in coming in. So those are the main reasons. And walk-ins have been coming in for thousands and thousands of years. This is not a new thing, probably millions of years. And galactically, I think it occurs for many reasons as well. But specifically speaking to Earth lives and human lifetimes, this has been happening for quite some time. And from the way I understood it 10, 15 years ago, it was quite rare in the sense that it wasn't granted often. Like, people really needed to follow through on their commitments why they came here. So they needed to work through the traumas and the addictions and things like that, whatever was preventing them from fulfilling their mission. And it wasn't something that was granted lightly. And because then I don't think they wanted souls to think that they could just easily just check out. They didn't want it to become the norm. And when I say they, I just think the collective consciousness, like all of the souls of the universe, all the fractals of light, really value life. Suicide doesn't exist, from how I understand it anyways. Suicide really doesn't exist in many other places around the galaxies. It's kind of a 3D interference thing. So it's an implant to take your life. And in that most places that are fifth density and higher, the beings are so much more advanced that they wouldn't consider doing something like that unless they were captured or taken into a situation where they were enslaved, or some extreme situation that they needed to get out of. But it really doesn't exist. So this notion of suicide in this reality is somewhat of an implant, and it's an interference that is embedded within this 3D matrix that is almost encouraging. And because they know that if they have somebody die in a tragic way, or they take their own life, they're more likely to be able to be taken into the void, which is just an astral space of energy where a lot of souls can become lost. And instead of going to the real light, they go to the false light, and then they're tricked into many reincarnations, or they're just kind of stuck there. And so it's an aversion somewhat like hell, but not exactly. But it could be described in such a way. So what was my point? So walk-ins haven't been a very big thing, but what I discovered in my work with clients that I started seeing the walk-ins happen more and more frequently than I had previously understood them to be allowed. And because we are on the Ascension timeline, meaning this is a dominant timeline, where a lot of people who are in this timeline are here to help with the evolution of humanity, of the human species, and the shifting the density of the planet to a higher density field. So it's really important. This is the Ascension timeline. So those that come in are very serious about following through on their mission. So if someone gets derailed or gets really anchored into the 3D and numbs themselves through addiction and alcohol or whatever happens to them that disconnects them from that higher purpose, they will, in their intervention, there are backup plans, I guess. I don't know, for lack of a better term, there are backup plans where the soul will say, I don't want to become trapped here. SOS, I need help, for a lot of the different reasons that I mentioned, plus others. So this is all done on a higher consciousness level, like through the soul to soul family. They are communicating. So consciously, this person doesn't know this is occurring on a conscious level. So they're very depressed, or they're fully within their addiction. Whatever's happening to them on a conscious level in the physical body, they don't really have an awareness that this is occurring. All they're thinking about is the deep depression that they're in, and the potential of taking their own life, or et cetera, things like that. So the soul petitions to the soul group that they are requesting another soul to come through. So traditionally, a walk-in would be another soul that volunteers and says, okay, I'll take over this woman or this man's life, or this child's life. Even it could be young children, and that's a whole other level. But they'll volunteer to come through, and there are different ways that it can occur, which I'll explain in a second, but they'll basically come in and take over the person's life. I talk about this in the book, and I'll give you more details in the book, but here it's more of an overview. So what will occur is in a couple different ways. One, there's a near-death experience. Two, there is some sort of procedure where the person is under some sort of anesthesia. Or three, the soul coming through is advanced enough, or for other reasons, such as that it could just happen overnight during sleep. So it doesn't always have to be a traumatic near-death experience. So it could be a dental procedure where someone might be knocked out, like their wisdom teeth are taken out, for example, or tonsil surgery, or a procedure where they're briefly anesthetized. Or it could be a near-death experience where they die, and then this being comes over and takes over. Again, I want to make sure it's understood or clear that this is consensual. So both souls are consenting. One soul is consenting to leave. The other soul is consenting to come through and assist by taking over the life, because it's the life purpose that is really valuable and important, and all the lives that it will affect. If this if this new soul comes through and continues their life path, because it's generational. Some of these missions are generational. It took 2-3 generations to get to that person, and that person, if they fail by taking their own life, for example, it affects a lot of different people. So this is a serious thing. So this soul will come through, whether it's overnight or through a procedure or this near-death experience, and they will have an imprint. They will take on the memories of the person from birth up until that point. Obviously, future memories, they won't exist. They take over from that point. Now, depending on the density of the soul coming through, which previously, how I understood it before, a lot of times the walk-ins choose not to remember, because they really authentically want to take over the life. And they don't remember, when they come through, they are taking over that soul. So they might feel different, and things might be off, and they might have sudden changes in personality, because it's really that new soul's energy coming through, but they don't have a recollection. They don't know that they're a new soul coming through. They're just taking on their lives. And so it can be an adjustment period. But as I'm seeing more currently, I don't know, than that last 30 years or so, at least through the clients that I'm seeing, many of them are remembering. And some of them speak out about it. You've seen people write books about it, or say, I am a walk-in, and they talk about their journey. I've seen interviews with people like that too. So So they do remember. And that's where things get tricky. People always ask me, "Oh, what about their marriage? Or do they just have to sleep with a stranger in their bed and call them their husband or wife?" I talk about that in the book. I get more into the specifics, but yeah. I mean, it's again, there's an adjustment period. Sometimes those relationships don't work out, and the marriages don't last. In other cases, they learn to love each other. In other cases, there's a lot of different things that can occur, and it gets a little bit complicated, but it does occur, and it occurs more often than you think. So it's sometimes it's very apparent to other people. This person will have a drastic uh, personality change. Suddenly they may go from really loving something to, oh, I hate that, or a phobia of something, or they had a phobia before and now they don't have it before, and it's like, well, that was a big one. Or food taste or desires. Maybe they were vegetarian before and this new soul really craves meat, or the opposite. One coming in might be more feminine or masculine than the other, and it can kind of be very evident with the new soul. Maybe they're a little bit more feminine than they were before, maybe a little bit more masculine, and vice versa. So a lot of times people will notice the difference, and even the soul themselves will notice something's different about me. But again, if they've chosen not to remember, they will just chalk it up with, that's strange, and then they just go through this adjustment period, and then eventually they acclimate. And then there are others that come through and they want to remember, and they do remember, and they understand why everything's changed, and then they take on the memories. But even though someone imprints on the memories, they don't always take the full emotion. Like when you have an experience, you have an emotional reaction, a mental reaction, a physical reaction. When somebody imprints your memories, they're not going to have the full 100% like experience. So they'll take on a lot of it, but they're not going to take on the whole. So there are a lot of pieces missing sometimes with these walk-ins, where they understand stuff, but then it doesn't always make sense, or there's missing pieces or components to it. So it can be quite complicated. And again, walk-ins can be at any age. Now, reverse walk-ins. I didn't learn about reverse walk-ins, and I have a very intimate experience with reverse walk-ins with a family member. I talk about that in the book, but I also learned about it through the children. So reverse walk-ins to me, is a new concept. People watching this might be like, oh, Sherri, that's old news. I didn't know about it. So this is something new to me that came through in my children's sessions, because I work with such high vibrational starseeds. And they told me that the biggest challenge of volunteering to come into our third density, into these physical bodies, into this matrix, is the primal aspect of our bodies being so vulnerable, and they don't like the younger years. They don't like being a baby or a toddler. It's too challenging for them. And most babies are way more intelligent than people give them credit for, just because they don't have the words or the intellect developed yet to articulate how they feel or what they want to say. So they get frustrated and they cry and they throw and they act like babies. But in reality, they just don't know how to say what they want to say. And people aren't telepathically trained anymore. So they just they don't understand why people don't treat them like the evolved, enlightened souls that they truly are. So a lot of children, it's their higher self will tell me, I did not want to experience that. That is a horrible period of time. That seems like forever. I didn't want to experience it. I wanted to bypass those years. And it could be months, sorry, I keep itching my face. I have a fan on and my hairs are tickling me. So it could be a couple of months they want to bypass. It could be a year they want to bypass. They could want to bypass till they're 6, 7 years old, just to get through the whole, younger years. So a reverse walk-in, what it means is they plan ahead of time to have a volunteer soul be birthed into their body to be a placeholder for a period of time that's determined, so that they're still present. They're still always there. They're just not in control of the avatar, but the soul that's present in the body, and the soul that will come through, the true version of that person that they will mature into, they're always communicating. They're always together. It's not like that soul is someplace else, but there's a walk-in that comes in from the beginning. And that's why we call it reverse walk-in, because it's the volunteer soul it's a placeholder. And a lot of times it's either an angelic it's an angelic being that volunteers. So most of the time they're really pure, very easygoing, easy babies, very like they're adapted. They know what it's like to be in a human body. They have experience. They're connected to this energy. Not because they're bad, but they're used to it. They've integrated enough so that they're like, all right, I can come in. I'll take the place of you in this body until this age. And generally they're very pleasant. Now it can also be a soul family member that you've had lifetimes with before, and they're very adapted to the body, and they're not going to have any struggles with a lot of things that a star seed coming through that's not used to the body would have challenges with. You're like, okay, I'll be fine. I could be a baby. I could do that. And then they'll volunteer. So it's another soul that's had many lives here that likely knows the family in some way. And then they'll be in the body and they'll have all the experiences and all the challenges that the other star seed doesn't want. And they'll allow the body to grow. And also sometimes it's not even just a preference. It's the star seed is so high vibrational that the body can't even integrate, nor could the mother have carried a fetus or, carried a baby, a pregnancy, that high frequency for 9 months or even less time. So they needed a placeholder to get basically like a surrogate soul to come through and connect with the body so that the body can acclimate. And then what happens is the soul coming through will start to integrate their energy slowly at birth throughout those years. So again, they're always present, and they integrate their energy a little bit at a time so that the body gets used to them coming through. And it's all done by design, and depending on the density of the soul coming through, where they're from, and a lot of other factors, it'll determine how long that integration takes place. And then when they're ready, they will come through. Again, they could be overnight. It could be because of a minor procedure like a tonsillectomy. That's a very common method for them to come through because they are so common. So dental procedures or some sort of minor surgery, tonsillectomies for children specifically tend to be one of the highest rate of reverse walk-ins. That doesn't mean that if you're watching this and your child had a tonsillectomy at X age that they're a walk-in 100% or a reverse walk-in. But I'm not saying that. But I've noticed that that's a mechanism or whatever I'm trying to say, where a lot of them do choose to come through because it's a minor procedure. They are anesthetized. And so the process of the body being in such a relaxed state and anesthetized, one soul can leave, the other soul comes through. So that's a common time. And then, of course, there are tragic events, car accidents and things like that, or near drowning, near death experience, where they plan that because for whatever reason, they need the body to be that almost near death place in order for the transition to take place. So again, it can get quite complicated, but really what the reverse walk-in means is that they have the placeholder soul stay in for the determined period of time until the soul, the true soul of that person that will carry out their life will then come through and take over, and then that other soul will either go away or will remain nearby as a spirit guide or some sort of, if it was an angel, it will be like a guardian angel, and then they will stay together. This is happening at an alarming rate, more than I have ever even knew was possible, and I'm seeing it more with children than I've ever seen before. So it is to me, and from my experience, there are more than you think. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing, and it's neither really. It's just a part of the ascension and how these souls are choosing to come through because they know the mom wouldn't be able to carry that type of pregnancy with such a high frequency being. The body wouldn't be able to take it, the body of the baby. So there's a lot of reasons why. So if you're a parent out there and you notice that your child ever went through a drastic personality change, I mean, some of these children, it's drastic, like overnight, they're like, they notice, other people notice. It's sudden, drastic personality changes in one direction or the other. And you'll have a knowing like something is off, but you don't really have anyone to ask about it. So, if that's something you're experiencing, then likely one of your children or your child is a walk-in or a reverse walk-in. If you are an adult and think, reverse walk-ins don't happen for adults. I just want to be clear. Reverse walk-ins are really for children so that they can have a placeholder until they're ready to come through. So it's reverse. But adults have just the traditional or typical, if there is such a thing, walk-ins where one soul leaves and the others. Now, it's not always a tragic reason too. So I want to be clear about this. People don't talk about this that much. Walk-ins aren't always a tragic thing. Like, it's not just always 100% because the soul couldn't finish the job because of addiction or trauma, or they couldn't acclimate to this reality. It was too intense for them. They were too sensitive. Sometimes there's just a soul contract that some of these soul families will take turns, and there is one that will come through for different stages of life. So it's not really a trauma related. It's just a preference where they plan, okay, I'll be in this life until this age, until you accomplish this much, and then I'll come in and I'll take it from there, and I'll do this and I'll do that much, and then there might even be a third. So it's a lot more complicated than people realize. And it's not black and white. It's not the same for everybody. And I'm learning that through my sessions. And every time I feel like I've gotten a good understanding of it, then someone else will come in and I'm like, whoa, this is like throwing me off now. I thought I had a good understanding, and clearly I didn't. So, but that's great. We're always learning and we're always evolving. And I think that's one of my biggest lessons that I'm learning right now, is that everything is so multidimensional and there's so many explanations for everything, that's okay. That's part of the evolution. That's part of the process. So just when you feel like you figured it out, you probably haven't, but that's okay because it's just part of the process. It's just as we evolve. So today I really wanted to talk about walk-ins because it's just part of the ascension. It's just part of the process. And I think in other areas of the world, not the world, of the galaxies, and maybe perhaps inner Earth, this is something that occurs, but for different reasons. And in the future, it will likely occur more when necessary, in different ways than we know now. So just be open to the concept. If you feel like you are one, there's nothing really you need to do about it. Just say, oh man, they have that epiphany. That makes sense. I probably am a walk-in. Okay, great. Then you move forward and you just live your life moving forward, just knowing that it's not going to change much, but maybe it'll make you feel better knowing this is why I am so different than I was before. And you just have that answer. And then you just close that chapter of that, I don't know, or, that part of you that wondered, and then you can move on from it. And same goes with your children. You don't need to search and desperately find somebody to validate what you feel like and say, I have to talk to Sherri because I think, maybe she's onto something, and I think my son is a walk-in. You don't have to find me for me to validate it for you, just like you don't need to find someone else that you have to pay a lot of money to validate it as well. If you feel it, then it likely is true. And again, there isn't anything big you need to do. Just say, okay, I want to learn this new version of my son or my daughter, and accept that this is why they're different and there's a reason for it. And then you just move on, and you're with a more open mind and an open heart. And then maybe you try to communicate with them through meditation and other subtle ways energetically, and see if maybe you get some answers that will come, randomly. So just be open to the time period. It may not always come right when you ask. So that's my intention. So it's not really, walk-ins, I guess, aren't really 3D interference. I think it's there to combat 3D interference. So they come in to help. My dog's about to go crazy because noise downstairs. So I think this is a good time to stop the video. Not a bad thing. They're just helping guide the ones that are struggling in the 3D with the 3D and the 3D interference. So hopefully this is clear and this makes sense to you. Please check out the book. Share these videos if you find them helpful and you think there's anyone that might find them helpful as well. I am so grateful for everybody for continuing to support and watch me and these videos. I'm putting a lot of energy and effort into them, and they've been very well received so far. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to leave comments, email me, message me. It keeps me going and motivated. So thank you for that. So I hope that this video today, you receive it well and with an open heart. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, everybody.